And we're ready whenever you are, Mayor.
Thank you. Good evening, and thank you for attending tonight's City Council meeting. For those who are attending remotely, the camera in council chambers is set up to show those attending in person tonight. The platform we are using has a raise hand feature. You will notice a picture of a hand in the upper right-hand corner. When we reach the point in the meeting where the public has the opportunity to address council, you can click that button to be given your opportunity to address council. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Tulley,
Here.
Councilor Silly,
Here.
Councilor Powers,
Here.
Councilor Scamperly,
Here.
Councilor Stevenson,
Here.
Councilor Trim,
Here.
Councilor Weaver,
Here.
quorum present.
Thank you. We have two presentations tonight. The first is from City Controller Angela Gray regarding the 2024 Quarter 1 financial review.
Good evening, Mayor and Council.
Good evening.
Included in tonight's agenda are the March 31st numbers for the first quarter. And turning to page 1, titled Budget Report for the General Fund, we can see a very high level. The first presentation is how each department is spending through the first quarter. What we tend to look for is, if in a perfect world, equal spending. So we should have 75% of budget remaining in most of the departmental categories. With the exception of a few, all of them are spending according to plan, but it is early in the year, only having passed 90 days. The one I would just like to clarify on is a department number 1620, which is the City Hall building. That one is looking as though we have 28% remaining. There will be a budget amendment coming your way that relates to the renovations in the court. And so the court system does reimburse those renovations. And so we'll be putting forward a budget amendment that equally aligns the revenue and expenses anticipated to bring that line back up. The rest of them, one of them is the Arena 7181 is the department number that tends to spend a little bit heavy in the winter months, subsides in the spring, summer, and then we'll open that back up and do some more spending in the winter, fall and winter months at the end of the year. So are there any questions on that?
So if, just to address the City Hall building itself, I know I saw in the consent agenda, the Penny project working on this. Is that a part of this particular report, or is that part of the maybe next quarter?
As far as the payment to them?
Yeah.
That has already been put into these numbers here.
Okay.
So there's in the capital construction line on the detail report.
It goes just under 20 grand or something. Yep.
It's probably a portion of that. The total was $66,512 for that renovation. So we'll be receiving that back.
Okay. Thank you.
I do have a question regarding snow removal. Are employee salaries there basically a percentage of salary and expensed over 12 months? The reason I'm asking is because I would think maybe in the first 3 months of the year we might have spent less than anticipated in snow removal because we didn't get a lot of snow this year.
I can provide as a follow-up what is coded to the snow removal. It is not 1/12 of their salary, so I can provide that.
Okay, thank you.
There are a few departments we are watching for anticipated overages that were unanticipated at the creation of this budget. And the first one is the city manager. That position was advertised higher than what the budget calls for as far as total salary. There is health insurance also budgeted to that at the highest level of health insurance. So that is certainly a department that I have my eyes on to see what we need to do there, pending the hiring of a city manager. The second department that we were going to go into a little bit in detail tonight is the fire department. We have a lot of unanticipated overtime that was not known at the time we did the budget and modified this budget. So we'll talk through that in just a minute. And then also the police budget is another one that we are looking and just watching as the year progresses for a possible impact to that budget based upon a possible retirement that was unknown at the creation of this budget as well. So we are, as always, trying to keep our rein on the spending, prevent, which we have done because we don't really have a choice, frivolous spending. So the budget was built without a specific function that we can't do without. So when we talk about some of the challenges coming up within the budget, one of the bigger challenges that we have is there's really no surpluses of money built into this budget. It was really a bare bones budget at the creation. So we will be continued to be challenged by that. On the water budget, all of the departments fall where we would expect them year to date, and as well as the sewer. Now the sewer has received this fund. We have billed 1/2 of the sewer revenue within the city so far. And the other thing inside the sewer that's rolled up into the sewer line is we started in 2024 billing Hewelton for their intermunicipal agreement. And the good news of that is we had a budget line item for that of $32,000, and the first quarter bill to them for January through March was $48,000. So we have already met that budget line item and exceeded that, and we will continue to bill them for the next indefinitely.
And I know this is new, so are we anticipating that amount to come in every quarter? 48,000?
It's a little higher than we would expect right now because they are, they're totally decommissioning their plant, which includes the draining off of their lagoons. So there is some additional flow coming in that we won't see year over year.
Thank you.
The other positive news that noteworthy just before we move on is for years, over a decade, I believe, the aid to municipalities has not changed. And with the passing of the most recent budget, the city of Ogdensburg will expect to receive approximately 12% more in AIM funding, which is $198,000. We're currently at $1.7 million as part of our budget, and we are anticipating receiving more AIM funding in the future. So the next report is the same information, but it just looks at your budgeted expense types. And so in the general fund, we can see that same numbers, we've met 50% of the revenue. The big piece of that there is the real property taxes are at this point recorded in full. And when we look at the various spending lines, the largest within the city is our personal services line, which we've spent 78. We have 78% left to spend on that. So that's where we would anticipate it to be at this time. Going through the water fund is the same exact, almost exactly the same ratios. We've spent 77, we have 77 left to spend in personal services, and likewise in the sewer fund. So are there any questions? Okay. And just for informational purposes, new to the city council packet, we have provided 3 years of revenue comparison within the general fund, water fund, and sewer fund. And that's really just for your information. So turning, if there's no further questions on the financials, I would like to just start talking about the fire department. And what we're dealing with in the fire department budget for 2024 is an unanticipated overtime cost. And so when the 2024 budget was produced, we had anticipated some overtime. We amended the budget to hire additional firefighters who are currently in the academy. And two of the clauses within the union contract that contribute to the expenses are a minimum staffing per shift of 5 firefighters. So that's the one thing that we have to do. And then 2 firefighters per shift can take a vacation at it simultaneously. And each vacation is 168 hours. So it's not a small amount of time to backfill when firefighters go out on vacation. We have an overall staffing that we've increased to in 2024 of 24 firefighters. There's 4 shifts with 6 firefighters assigned to each shift. And at the time of the budget, we knew that there would be 2 retirees in the summer. And so that is how we built this budget. If you turn to page 2 of the presentation, we've gone month by month of when we have staffing changes. So the budget calls for 18 on a shift because we have 6 in the academy. They're not able to be on shift. And we're actually ending January through March with only 15 firefighters. We're down 3 due to injury, and those are both a combination of on-the-job injuries and out-of-work injuries. The overtime on that comes to a cost of $81,300. And you can see going through the year, we've kind of estimated where we think we will be throughout the year. April through June, we expect to be down 4 firefighters again at a cost of $108,500. July through August, also due to injury, we will be down 3 firefighters. The recruits will come back on, so that number jumps up to 24 that are available. And that overtime is estimated to be $54,200. At this point in time, we do expect the 2 retirees that we know about to leave service. And from September to December, barring no changes in staffing, we would only have 22 available firefighters. We know that we will continue to have 1 out on injury at a cost of $36,000 for those 4 months. At a minimum, at this date, it's anticipated that the extra cost of overtime, it will cost the city almost $300,000. So the monthly cost of overtime per firefighter is $9,100. And there are 2, if we go to the last page of the presentation, there are 2 additional firefighters that are eligible to retire. Upon retirement, a firefighter as well as a police officer are typically receive a payout of their accrued time, which I have seen range from $25,000 to $40,000 per firefighter or police officer. So having 2 unknown departures, if they'll retire, that $280 to $300 will grow substantially should they choose a 2024 retirement. That is not in our budget. At this time, one of the challenges that the city has is there are no firefighters on the civil service test to recruit. So even if we had wanted to add them, we don't have the opportunity. And the chief and city manager have asked when the next testing will be. And I believe that that's a to be determined situation.
Any questions or comments with regards to the fire department report?
I have a question. So if we get into a situation like this, and can we hire somebody even though there's no list to hire from,
Like
even if it's on an intern?
Lateral move or a provisional one?
No, from, let's say, another fire department.
Yeah, lateral move.
Yeah.
I
I
don't
can
think
let Chief Stoll speak to that.
So all of the things that you mentioned, I guess there's some possibility. In order to be a career firefighter, you have to have a certain number of training hours to be a career firefighter. So a provisional appointment, they would have to already have the training. There's no volunteer that gets that training. And as far as a lateral transfer, that could be looked into. But with that, they usually come in at whatever salary they were at their other department. And I'm not sure we're going to lure any other career department firefighter to come here. And then on the other, there's some departments that do a per diem, but that would be against the union contract.
Real quick with the civil service aspect, and I know the Department of Corrections, the sergeant's test that came out recently through application process was done through a lot of prodding and lobbying. They had nobody, they didn't plan on issuing a supervisor's test in that agency. I don't know how county civil service correlates with the state civil service, or if they come together in any way, shape, or form, or if there's
So
any.
one thing I've been told in several conversations with our county civil service, who actually directed me to the state, which I wasn't able to get any answers from them either, is when we switched to using the county for entry-level exams, you're at the mercy of the state, where if it was still just a city exam, the city could ask for an exam at any point in time. But because it's at the county and state level, they only give it once a year. The test was given in January. I requested a new exam in August in anticipation that with the hopes of a new council, we would be hiring, and I knew there wasn't enough people on the list. The list at that point was only 1 year old, and there was no hiring in sight, so the council denied my request. Again, I've reached out to the administrator of civil service for the county and the state. Interim city manager and I have both discussed possibly reaching out to some state representatives to see if there's anything we can do. But a lot of it has to do with the fact that the city of Ogdensburg no longer it's not a city of Ogdensburg list necessarily anymore. Promotional exams are just within the city. We could ask for those. But the hiring, you're probably looking at
I
January.
would just continue to create more vacancy though, right? I mean, promoting within and recognizing the need. I'm not saying there's no need for it, but
So
ultimately
there's no, unless.
nothing
I guess-
coming in behind it.
No. So I would encourage you all to reach out to the representatives, as I intend to do, and see if we can, I don't know.
I'd be happy to help with that in any way. I had relationships with people in civil service. We've done a lot of work through state employment and certain agencies through docs. So I'd be happy to help.
Well, myself and city manager are working
Yeah.
on this since we hired the last 6, because we knew it was a potential problem, and we just hit roadblocks all along the way. So, any other questions for me?
I do, and I would request on behalf of council, either in the June update or earlier, a projection of what the estimated expenses for the year will be in the fire department. And the reason I'm asking is because back earlier in the year, when we made presentations to council about considering hiring 6 firefighters, it was projected that the city would save $500,000 this year in expense by making that move. So looking at this unanticipated overtime, I'm trying to figure out how that fits into that 512 projected savings. In other words, you had estimated that we were going to save $240,000 in overtime. Well, this is 280 net against the 240, so really we're only 40,000 over budget in overtime, or does it go back to the original budget and we're truly 280 over?
So the modified budget was budgeted. I think if you'll recall in the presentation that we gave, we were going to readdress in July or in June, when I knew there was 2 retirements coming up in August, whether or not we fill those 2 positions or not. We're not there yet, obviously. But the modified budget was to reflect the hiring of the 6 firefighters and no additional retirements, and obviously not these issues that we're having with illness and injury. So the modified budget reflects what we anticipated the end of through June, I guess, August until the retirement. So we mentioned that we would have to come back to the table with that.
Okay, so at least for me, it would be helpful to have a picture of the total budget projection and not just this one piece. All right.
We can work on putting that together.
Okay. Thank you.
I will say the only change that we'll probably see no matter what happens throughout the year is going to be the overtime. So, but we can put the numbers together.
And then with the comment about the accrual payouts at retirement. And Andrew, you said that the average payout for a retiree is between 25 and 40,000.
Those are the numbers that we typically see upon retirement, correct?
All right, so we budgeted $340,000 for time accrual payouts. So in theory, if we had 4 retirements at 40,000, 160,000, we'd still be 180,000 under budget. Is that a fair assessment?
The answer is no. And the reason for that is because that line is really to cover vacation coverage. So every 0.140 in the city budget calls it time accrual payout. But when we come to the fire department budget, that line is actually a budget for vacation coverage. So that's the 233, 120 on the modified budget.
Okay.
And we do have built into the salary numbers, however, the cost of 2 firefighters accrual payouts. We felt that the salary, the way that we budgeted that, would cover two retirements. So for those 2, the aggregate of the fire department, we feel is covered for those 2 payouts. It's just if we have 2 more, those would not be budgeted for.
Okay.
Right.
All right, that was all I had. Anybody else? Okay. Angela, thank you. Chief, thank you for your presentation tonight.
Thank you.
Second presentation tonight will be made by Interim City Manager Andrea Smith with regards to our Earth Day poster presentation.
So today is Earth Day, and I think the next item is a proclamation for Earth Day to be read by the mayor. One of the things that we are doing this year to celebrate Earth Day is we are having a poster contest with the Ogdensburg School District and their elementary students specifically. So a number of students have submitted artwork for the poster contest. And after tonight's council meeting, they will be available on the city's website and through our Facebook pages, and you can vote on your favorite posters through May 15th, and winners of that poster contest will be announced on Saturday, May 18th, when we are hosting a riverbank cleanup in partnership with Save the River. And so I hope that everybody will take an opportunity to take a look at the artwork submitted by the students and vote for your favorite art pieces.
Okay, it's nice to see the students getting involved in that type of activity, and so we really appreciate that. Thank you for sharing that. All right, next we do have one proclamation this evening. Office of the Mayor, Ogdensburg, New York proclamation. Whereas the celebration of Earth Day was first proposed in 1969 by peace activist John McConnell, with a second proposal advanced by the late former U.S. Senator Gaylord Nelson, with the first Earth Day being celebrated in 1970. And whereas Earth Day is the largest secular holiday celebrated on Earth, with more than 1 billion celebrants advancing planet-friendly initiatives in over 192 countries around our world, with the 2024 Earth Day marking the 54th anniversary of this worldwide celebration. And whereas our city applauds the many groups who seek to protect our environment through riverbank cleanup efforts, through the work of Save the River, our local Key Club, who conducts trail and park cleanups, as well as other environmentally conscious organizations across the North Country. And whereas we are currently facing tremendous global challenges, among them the need to manage and increase the amount of waste to which plastics will contribute roughly 12 million metric tons by 2050. And whereas approximately only 10% of plastic waste is recycled, and whereas all people of this earth from all walks of life have a right to a healthy environment, and plastic pollution has been associated with several health issues affecting the general population. And whereas children, the youth, and the most vulnerable are disproportionately affected by plastic pollution, and whereas Earth Day is an annual reminder of the constant need for environmental activism, stewardship commitments, and sustainability efforts. Now therefore, I, Mayor Michael Tooley, have the distinct honor of proclaiming April 22nd, 2024 as Earth Day throughout the city of Ogdensburg, and encourage all of our residents, businesses, and institutions to use Earth Day to celebrate the earth and promote the well-being of the inhabitants of the city and the protection of their environment, so that future generations may enjoy all that our planet affords us. In witness whereof, I have hereunto set my hand and caused this seal to be affixed. That's it. We do not have any public hearings tonight, so that brings us to personal appearance. At this time, if anyone attending in person would like to address council, please come down to the podium and you will have 5 minutes.
Good evening, council. It's been a while since I stood up here. Standing up here as a concerned taxpayer for Ogdensburg, and I know I don't speak alone. I'm probably the only one that's willing to come up here and speak. But I was wondering, if we could clarify a couple things with the fire department contract. Back when the last council was seated, it was stated by, I believe, the president of the union that they would not negotiate any line item in the contract with that council. Don't blame them, totally understood. I was not a fan of the last council, absolutely not. But I'm wondering if there's any avenues, not for all of it, but let's say for the hazard pay when a 6th fireman isn't on duty. That's $3 an hour. There's a 5-man minimum. Has there been any talks about opening up that line item? Because right now, I'm assuming there's not a 6-person shift at all. So if you multiply that by the year, that's at $3 an hour. That doesn't include the taxes we pay on it, or if it's time and a half overtime. That's $131,000 right there. If we're paying $3 an hour for 5 men, 24 hours a day, 365 days a year, it's $131,000. That's it, $3 an hour. I don't know if we pay them $4.50 an hour if they're on overtime. I don't know if you guys know that fact, but it's something that, these numbers are quite a bit. And I know our fund balance has been declining for a couple of years now. And again, I'm a big proponent of first responders, fire department, law enforcement, everybody. But at some point, there's got to be a balance to services provided and the taxes that we are paying. Our tax levy went up from what, $1.1 million last year based on the new assessments. And at some point, there's got to be some give and take here. So, like I said, I believe the union president last, 2-3 years ago when they ran roughshod over the contract, said, we'll open it up with a different council. And it's not like you can open up the whole thing, but I took a quick look through the contract. It references a retirement incentive from 12/31/15 for $20,000. Why is that included in this contract? It references a 25-year retirement. It hasn't been that way since 1987. Why are those line items still in that contract? Makes no sense. It was signed in 2020. So I would update that if you do open it up. But like I said, I know I might be the only one to speak of it, but there's a lot of people in the community that feel the same way. So take it for what it's worth. I know a lot of people around here. It's not trust me, it's not being said behind closed doors. So take it for what it's worth, but I think everybody ought to look into it because you're probably looking in the lines of $400,000 on top of that. So I don't know. Maybe we've got the money. I don't know. I don't know what the fund balance is, but somebody better figure it out.
Thank you, Scott. Now, if anyone attending remotely would like to address council, please use the raised hand feature. The city clerk will recognize and unmute one person at a time, and you will have 5 minutes.
The first individual is registered as Joanne Garrow, and I'll unmute that individual now. It appears you are self-muted.
Hi, everyone.
Good evening.
I just wanted to bring something to council. I noticed that the Village of Canton has announced a no low mow for the month of May to assist in the pollinators. And since today is Earth Day, I thought I would bring that to City Council to see if it's something that Ogdensburg would consider.
Okay, are you finished? All
I am, thank you.
right, thank you.
I do not see any other hands raised.
And that brings us to correspondence. Do we have any correspondence?
We do not.
That brings us to the consent agenda. The claims as enumerated in general fund warrant number 8-2024 in the amount of $620,217.57, and library warrant number 8-2024 in the amount of $0, and capital fund warrant number 8-2024 in the amount of $528,085.99, and community development fund warrant number 8-2024 in the amount of $0, and community renewal fund warrant number 8-2024 in the amount of $0 as audited be and the same hereby are ordered paid. I so move.
Second.
Kathy, please call the roll.
Mayor Tulley,
Yes.
Counselor Selly,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson,
Yes.
Counselor Trim,
Yes.
Counselor Weaver,
Yes.
approved.
We have 2 appointments tonight. First, I will make a motion to appoint Kim Bell to a 5-year term on the Board of Assessment and Review, term to begin April 22nd, 2024, and end September 30, 2029.
Second.
Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson,
Yes.
Counselor Trim,
Yes.
Counselor Weaver,
Yes.
Mayor Tulley,
Yes.
Counselor Selly,
Yes.
approved.
I make a motion to appoint Steve Peretta to a 3-year term on the Tree Commission, term to begin April 22nd, 2024, and end April 22nd, 2027.
Second.
Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson,
Yes.
Counselor Trim,
Yes.
Counselor Weaver,
Yes.
Mayor Tulley,
Yes.
Counselor Selly,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
approved.
And that brings us to items for council action. Our first item of business will be read by interim city manager Andrea Smith.
This is a resolution calling for a public hearing regarding a local law to amend Chapter 22147B, subsection 2 of the Ogdensburg Municipal Code entitled Accessory Uses and Structures. Be it resolved that proposed local law of the year 22 entitled Amendment to the Ogdensburg Municipal Code, Section 22147B2, entitled Accessory Uses and Structures, subsection B, exempt accessory structures B, and it hereby is introduced before the City Council of the City of Ogdensburg, New York. And be it resolved that the City Council hold a public hearing on said proposed local law at the City Council Chambers, 330 4th Street, Ogdensburg, New York, at 6 p.m. on Monday, May 13th, 2024. And be it further resolved that the city clerk give notice of such public hearing by publication in the newspaper so designated for the publication of legal notices at least 7 days before the hearing date of a notice setting forth the time and place and describing the proposed local law in summary form.
Is everyone-
Move that. Oops, sorry.
We have a motion.
Second.
Any discussion?
Just think it makes complete sense to many people.
And the motion indicates that the public hearing with regards to the change will be to increase as an exempt accessory structure structures no higher than 10 feet in height, which is an increase from 6 feet in height. Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Counselor Stevenson,
Yes.
Counselor Trim,
Yes.
Counselor Weaver,
Yes.
Mayor Tulley,
Yes.
Counselor Selly,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
approved.
Our next item of business will be read by interim city manager Andrea Smith.
This is a resolution for a special city council meeting on Saturday, April 27th, 2024 at 11 a.m. at City Hall, City Council Chambers, Ogdensburg, New York. Be it resolved that there will be a special city council meeting held on Saturday, April 27th, 2024 at 11 a.m. in the City Hall Council Chambers, Ogdensburg, New York on the following topic. And the agenda for that special meeting has been attached and included in tonight's meeting materials.
Move that.
Second.
Any discussion? Kathy, please call the roll.
Counselor Trim,
Yes.
Counselor Weaver,
Yes.
Mayor Tulley,
Yes.
Counselor Selly,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson,
Yes.
approved.
And that brings us to old business. And we'll begin with interim city manager Andrea Smith.
I just wanted to give council and the public an update to let you all know that DPW has started the spring pickup. We were able to start a little earlier than scheduled, but we will continue doing that through the amended date, which this year will be Sunday, May 26th. And so far, they've completed the first and second ward, and they'll continue to go through the city until the end of May. So far, the new fees that are now imposed are working in that many contractors that have come have actually opted not to dispose of oversized limbs. So while we're not getting the revenue, we're also not accepting the brush. So that's a win for us, I think. So, so far so good. It's early, but just wanted to give council an update on that.
Any questions or comments?
Sounds good.
Thank you. Any other old business to come before council? All right, on to new business. Any new business to bring up before council tonight? All right, I do have one item. In late March, I met with two small business owners. Each operates a salon in their residence. They are each charged a flat sewer and water rate per unit. So in other words, they pay double the residency rate. And they asked that the city consider eliminating this rate and bill them at the residence rate. Their main concern, in their opinion, is fairness. They believe that there are other small businesses operating out of residences in the city that are not charged a double rate, suggesting other salons, daycare, home offices as examples. So if this double rate were to remain, they'd like to know how the city would fairly enforce it. And so I bring the topic to council for discussion, for consideration. And if there is interest, then we could ask for additional information about this from city staff.
I think that it has been a discussion over many years for those that say that they have the business there and they get the correct permitting and pay the correct fees. And then there are others that are not. And it's very hard to manage that. So I think we should have this discussion, see what an impact on the budget, on water, sewer that it would have. But we do definitely either need to enforce this across the board, or we need to make it more fair for those that have crossed other T's and dotted other I's.
How does metered water come into that? For if it's a commercial business, I mean, it's a residence and it's a potential commercial business. We have commercial businesses that are paying for their water on a meter.
This, I believe, is specific to home occupations that are not metered. But if council would like us to do some research and pull out a presentation, we're happy to put that together.
Would you be interested in hearing
Yeah.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I'd be curious, how many resident small businesses are being built that way? What would the impact on revenue to the city be if, in fact, that rate was eliminated and they were only billed the residents rate? As well as any other um, comments, opinions, whatever from administration that we would want to take into consideration before acting. So.
Your Honor, I'd also like to hear if that's not economically feasible for us to do that, what would be a plan that we could go forward with making sure that if we don't remove that, that it become more fair across the board with enforcement?
Okay. Anyone else do business? All right, brings us to items for discussion. And the first item will be introduced by Interim City Manager Andrea Smith.
So I have two items, and just to keep them maybe in better order, one is not actually on your agenda, but it's just a reminder that this Friday is Arbor Day, and our tree commission will be hosting a tree planting ceremony in Little Park, which is the park just west of the Dubisky Center, next to the boat launch and the customs building there. So our tree commission will be hosting a reception and doing a tree planting at 10 a.m. And the item that is listed on your agenda is a public announcement that the Strategic Planning Committee has been meeting, and they too are holding a community meeting on May 6th. That will be held at the Dubisky Center at 6 p.m. And the intent of that meeting is to have a public discussion with the community, stakeholders, businesses, showcase some of the ideas and thoughts that the committee has come up with about downtown, where that might be, and discuss potential projects within that area in preparation for this year's grant season. So that includes, but is not limited to, the Downtown Revitalization Initiative and the New York Forward grant programs.
Questions, comments? Any other items for discussion?
Your Honor, I guess I would just ask in response to Mr. McRoberts' comments, if there's a way that we could maybe put a small little group together just to see if we could think outside the box of ways that we could help save some dollars in the fire department. I think we need to look at that with the unexpected overtime. We've been working very hard to fill that department, and I think that maybe we could ask if there's any ideas that could be brought forward. We're not experts at the fire department, but we definitely know the budget, and I think that this is a big concern for us. So perhaps we could sit down at the table and just talk about ideas that we could cut some costs there. If there are any, there might not be. Maybe the only answer is to find more firefighters, but maybe there's ideas how to find those firefighters that we can explore.
Yeah, I would just offer a couple of observations. One, we're hoping sometime in the next few weeks to see the 2022 audit to get a handle on how the city ended up that year with regards to general fund balance. We are expecting the 2023 audit on or before July. And so again, that'll give us a more updated picture of what the fund balance looked like. I think I'm anticipating that the fund balance in both those years will be better than was projected at the time the respective budgets were developed. And then with regards to fire department finances, again, I think getting a report from staff with regards to projected expenses for this year would help give us a better idea of how dire the situation might be in this year. And I will confess, I mean, Five is new up here, but I will confess, I have not read a fire department contract. All right. And so, I will take it upon myself, and maybe those of us who aren't familiar with that contract need to look through it and then make some determinations on our own what we might bring to the table, if anything. So there's a bit of a learning curve for us. But I do think your points are well taken.
Absolutely. In the update on the fire department, assuming we're gonna get some information, can we get information on just how much that hazard pay has affected the budget so far this year?
We are not presently paying
I
hazard
didn't think
pay.
so. I didn't think we had even touched hazard pay this year.
Well, we were in the beginning of the year, up until the point that we hired the 6 new recruits. But we can give you a report on that.
Okay. Just, I think we have to watch what we say, but in terms of the contract, which is public knowledge, hazard pay kicks in when it's less than 5 on a shift, correct?
That's correct.
Okay.
Oh,
Thank you.
sorry. Yeah, sorry.
6 and 5.
The chief will come up. I think you're,
So the hazard pay clause is with the number of personnel assigned to a shift. So in January, when we hired the 6 firefighters, the hazard pay all went away. We paid hazard pay for the first 30 days of the year. That was one of the largest reductions in the budget amendment that we made. Moving forward, with the anticipation of not being able to hire, I'm not sure that hazard pay would be required at that point, but that would be a discussion for a later time. If it is, we're intending to hire and we can't hire, I'm not sure exactly what happened with hazard pay, but there is no hazard pay currently being paid.
This is strictly just boils right down to a staffing crunch. You're dealing with vacation, personal sick, you're dealing with workers' comp, you're dealing with family sicknesses, illnesses, whatever the case may be. That's what's the driver of the overtime numbers right now.
Correct.
Hazard pay isn't even a factor yet, but, well, could be, God forbid, bad circumstances arise in your department, but, let's hope that doesn't happen, for the general health of our firefighters. But, that's what it boils right down to. It's all staffing and relief factors. So it's, and it is what it is at this point.
Yeah, I mean, the original budget for hazard pay before we made the budget amendment at the time we hired the 6 firefighters for this year, the original budget for hazard pay was $185,000.
And I believe we only paid $36,000. If I'm not
So there has been no hazard pay since January, since
the
new
day
fire-
that the 6 firefighters got sworn in.
Okay.
Year to date, we paid $13,000 in hazard pay.
13,104.
Thank you. And with regard to Joanne Garreau's comments, and I know they might have been difficult to hear, but I read the same story today. The Village of Canton is doing what's described as a no or low mow of grass for the month of May. And I'm trying to remember the rationale behind it, I think was to help the environment, and it was to help, it mentioned the bees benefiting from the fact that the grass was cut less often or whatever. So I don't know if that is something that the city would have interest in or not, but that's what she was referring to.
Well, it definitely is a concern because the more people that are using pesticides and keeping the dandelions and things out of their yards, and they're cutting more frequently, the bees don't have that type of flower to pollinate from.
Right, any other items for discussion? All right, so that brings us to citizen participation. At this time, if anyone attending in person would like to address council, please come down to the podium and you will have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. I'd like to know what direction we're going in with our recreation department. It's almost May. We have sport programs in the summer. We don't have any direct recreation programs per se. We need to develop some new recreation programs there, youth service programs, senior citizens programs, and we haven't done it. I'd just like an update on where we're going to go. Are we going with a recreation director? Are we going with a coordinator of recreation? Who's going to do that this summer? I think it's something that we should be discussing and moving forward. And that I think that's been a department that's been kicked around since the last administration. And I think it's time for us to take that, okay, and let's move ahead with it. Let's do something. Let's get somebody on board to run the recreation department. Thank you.
Now, if anyone attending remotely would like to address council, please use the raised hand feature. The city clerk will recognize and unmute one person at a time, and you will have 2 minutes.
I do not see any hands raised, Mayor.
All right, we now have a resolution to adjourn to executive session that I will introduce. Whereas the interim city manager requests meeting with city council in executive session to discuss the proposed lease of city-owned real property. And whereas New York State open meetings law permits city council to adjourn to executive session for such purpose. Now therefore be it resolved that city council adjourn to executive session to discuss the proposed lease of real property at 100 Riverside Avenue held by such public body, being that public discussion at this time would substantially affect the value thereof. And be it further resolved that any action resulting from this executive session shall be taken in open session. I so move. Is there a second? Any discussion? Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Counselor Weaver,
Yes.
Mayor Tully,
Yes.
Counselor Selly,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson,
Yes.
Counselor Trim,
Yes.
approved.
I also have an additional request for executive session for council's consideration that was not expected in advance of tonight's meeting, but I would like to request an executive session to discuss the matters leading to the appointment, employment, promotion, demotion, discipline, suspension, dismissal, or removal of a particular person or corporation.
I'll move that.
I'll second it.
Moved and seconded. Any discussion? Kathy, would you please call the roll?
Mayor Tully,
Yes.
Counselor Selly,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson,
Yes.
Counselor Trim,
Yes.
Counselor Weaver,
Yes.
approved.
And if it's pleases council, I'd like to ask that our fire chief join us for this particular executive session.
Any objections to that request?
No.
Okay, and for the public's knowledge, that, there may be action coming out of executive session. We will deal with both matters in executive session before we return.
Let's just do yours first.
record show that all members of city council have returned to the table from executive session. And with that, I will introduce the following. A resolution calling for public notice and a public hearing regarding the license of city-owned property at the Dubisky Visitor Center. Whereas the city of Ogdensburg requested proposals from qualified vendors to operate a concession at the Dubisky Visitor Center. Whereas the city has received a proposal from Nathan Griffith doing business as Hole in the Wall. Whereas to operate a profitable business, excuse me. And whereas Nathan Griffith has submitted a proposal to meet the needs of families with children, seniors, downtown office workers, recreational boaters, and fishermen. And whereas Nathan Griffith has demonstrated the experience and expertise to support this type of food service. And whereas the city council hereby accepts the proposal of Nathan Griffith to operate a concession located in the Dubisky Visitor Center, subject to approval of license. Whereas the city charter mandates that a license be finalized only after giving public notice in a local newspaper and conducting a public hearing. Be it resolved that the city council shall hold a public hearing on the 13th day of May, 2024 at 6 p.m. at the council chambers in the city of Ogdensburg, New York, regarding this proposed license of city-owned property. And be it further resolved that the city clerk give notice of such public hearing by publication in the newspaper so designated by the city council of the city of Ogdensburg for legal and public notices at least 7 days before the hearing date of a notice, setting forth the time and place and describing the proposed ordinance in summary form. I so move.
Second.
Any discussion? Kathy, would you call the roll, please?
Counselor Selly,
Yes.
Counselor Powers,
Yes.
Counselor Scamperly,
Yes.
Counselor Stevenson,
Yes.
Counselor Trim,
Yes.
Counselor Weaver,
Yes.
Mayor Tulley,
Yes.
approved.
I'll make a motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Meeting adjourned.